because I was getting a lot of pretty off the mark results in a lot of different ways. So I thought I would do a small sample of this data set so that you could understand what I'm asking for actually. So there's a lot of different variables here. I'm only going to look at 2 of them so that I can give you an idea of how you're supposed to think about things like this. And this is very simplified. So in the real world, this may be more complex, but right now this is more simplified. In the real world, you may do some more cross-checking, creating different measures across different variables. But in this, all I want is the variables themselves. There we go. All right, so what we're going to look at, spending, and we're going to look at number of purchases. We're just going to see if that changes or what that really means. So the first part is review the data set, familiarize yourself with variables or descriptions in the control test. So spending, the description of spending is the amount of money spent on the advertising campaign in US dollars. And number of purchase is the number of completed purchases made on the company's website. So really I'm just going to pick up the primary metric and the ultimate end metric for this. There's other things that we would look at in this, and the conclusions that you draw will be larger than this, but I wanted to give you sort of a microcosm so you understood. So the first thing I'm going to do, because generally I do it as a rule, is I'm going to get myself some sums and maybe even some averages. So I'm just going to sum up all of that. All right, I just want to get a quick sum of all of those. That way I know that. I may also pull average. I may also need to put an equal sign. This gives me a real quick idea of just what I'm looking at. All this. All right, and for these, just because I want it to be simple, I'll make those a number with a couple of decimal places. And then probably what I'm going to do, so this is, I'm all say this is sum, this is average. I'm going to then do some real simple math that just looks at the differences in these. So we'll call this diff sum and diff average. In that case, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do just the simple difference between this number minus this number. So equals that minus that. Just like that. And then we'll come across. All right, we get some good numbers here. So that is this minus this. And then I'm going to do the same with the averages. Equals this number minus this number. Come across, and that gives me the differences in the averages. Only reason to have both of these is just, sometimes I want more information rather than less. Honestly, oftentimes I want more information than less. And then right here, I'm going to put the t-test results. And so to make it really simple on me, I'm going to do I should probably put another t in there, t-test. I pick my first array, comma, pick my second array, comma. We're going to do two-tailed t-test. For most of them, you could do a one-tailed t-test. But you have to remember that you're going to be using an alpha of 0.025 rather than 0.05. We're going to use a two-sample equal variance homoscedastic t-test, and we get this number here. I want to come across. This gives me a t-test for all of these. I'm going to make all of those numbers, and I'm going to give myself a few more decimal places so I can see them. All right. And then I'm just going to do, just for my own information, I'm going to come across and do like a real quick look at these. Now, I'm only going to look at the first one and the second one, or the what was it, spending and number of purchases. Okay? So, I'm going to call these results. 0.05, so that is reject. And that's 0.05, so that is going to be fail to reject. So we reject a null hypothesis, we fail to reject a null hypothesis. Those are the only ones I'm looking at right now. Excellent. All right. I'm going to move that one over, and then I'm going to grab this Word document that I prepared. In this, I just have a couple things, the hypotheses, and the interpretation, and the conclusion. So this is step 2 is write their hypotheses. Step 3 is perform the t-test, which I've already done. Step 4 is to write the interpretation of the results. And then step 5 is to draw conclusions. Now the conclusions I'm going to draw are very simple because I'm only looking at 2 things. All right, so for my hypotheses for spending, I can't draw any hypotheses that are greater than the only things that I'm measuring. So I'm only looking at spending. So my null hypothesis is if I'm thinking about, let's look back at this. So we have testing and control. The prompt is, the data set provided represents a digital advertising campaign conducted by an online retailer specializing in electronic gadgets and devices. The company is facing a challenge in generating sufficient conversions and wants to improve their campaign's performance to increase sales and revenue. The current advertising campaign, referred to as the control campaign, has been running for some time. However, the company believes that implementing a new campaign, known as the test campaign, might help them achieve better results and attract more potential customers. The test campaign aims to address certain shortcomings identified in the control campaign to enhance user engagement and drive the conversions. The company has collected data for A/B testing and wants you to see whether the new campaign test is more effective than the previous campaign control. All right. So, for spending, if I'm looking at spending by spending, then the only thing that I'm really considering here is how much we've spent. So the null hypothesis is that we haven't spent any more money. And the alternative hypothesis is that the amount of money we spend is significantly different. I can say, maybe one of the things is that we want to spend less. Maybe we don't care about spending more, but the null hypothesis is that we haven't spent any more money. So I'll say the test campaign did not cost a significant amount more than the control campaign. And then for my alternative hypothesis, the test campaign cost was significantly different from the control campaign. All right, for purchases, definitely my null hypothesis is going to be that there aren't any more purchases with a new campaign. The test campaign will not... Oh, I should make this will. I should get my phrasing correct. test campaign will not provide significantly different numbers of purchases. And my alternative hypothesis is almost certainly single-tailed. Even though I'm doing two-tailed, I'm actually looking at a lot of different things that tell me this. The test campaign will provide significantly higher purchases. So then I look at my interpretation. My interpretation of the results here is that the spending is significantly different. So I would probably put my interpretation in two parts. My first part would be whether or not we reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. So I'll say reject the null hypothesis. And then I'll go ahead over here. Now this is a very simple way to do it. There's more complex ways to do this, but just a super easy way is just to look at my differences here. And so it was this minus this, and since this is a rejected hypothesis, that means that we spent a significant amount more on this campaign, the test campaign, than we did the control campaign. All right, number of purchases. Let's look at number of purchases. That's fail to reject. In fact, my number of purchases were very similar. So I will say fail to reject the null hypothesis. And then come over here and look, and I'll see here. Yeah, we had a very small difference. There were more purchases, but they were very, very small. There was not a significant difference in purchases between the test and control campaigns. All right. With that two pieces of information, what conclusions can I come up with? A real simple conclusion would be, I'm going to make three simple statements for conclusions. The first statement is since the test campaign cost significantly more money than the control, we would need to see an equal rise in purchases to fund the difference. All right, so I've made a propositioning conclusion. If this happens, since this is the true, right, there is a significant difference in the money, and we're spending more money on this test campaign, we would need to offset it with revenue, right? Number of purchases. So we start thinking about the number of purchases. Unfortunately, the number of purchases was not significantly different between the two campaigns. As such, the test campaign is likely less effective than the control. 3 statements. Since the test campaign cost significantly more money than the control, we would need to see an equal rise in purchases to fund the difference. Unfortunately, the number of purchases was not significantly different between the 2 campaigns. As such, the test campaign is likely less effective than the control. I'm not making the money back on my advertising. Right? That's just those 2 pieces of information. You have a lot more information here. Go ahead, if you haven't done something that looks like this, and of course expand this to have all the hypotheses, expand this to have all the interpretations, expand this to have all the conclusions. Don't write me a bunch of fluff, just write me the information. And give me correct data-driven conclusions. If you haven't written something that looks like this, resubmit it. I won't count it as late. Just resubmit it. And I'll grade that instead. Thank you very much. Bye.